Welcome to On the Chain. This is Chip. Jeff is currently on special assignment today. We're going to take a look at what it really means to fight for XRP. But it's not just a fight for XRP, it is a fight for all of crypto. We're going to dive in a little bit to that, see exactly what I'm talking about. We're going to deep dive and analyze some things and kind of tie some things together. What was said previously by the SEC? Where are they now? And there's going to be a bunch of things we're going to take a look at in between. Also, a phenomenal article came out with General Counsel of Ripple, Stuart Alderati. Just a phenomenal article, which we're going to take a look at. And it all starts right now.
Welcome to On the Chain.
Yeah, it's Chip here. You're like, well, where's Jeff? Well, Jeff's usually sitting in this time slot. However, he is away at the moment. Of course, here I am, and you got me. So just as always, shout out where you're from, city, country, throw it in there. Jeff and I always like to see where everybody's coming in from, and it's always something fun to take a look at. Now, we've obviously been talking about this forever and a day, it feels like. But the SEC, quite honestly, they've been stepping in a little bit lately, right? Should they really have brought this lawsuit, right? So you got to remember that it was the previous administration on the last day before Clayton was out the door. He was like, I'm heading out the door. And then boom, don't let that door hit you in the, where the, in the behind, right? So it was dropped. So the next administration's figuring it out, how are they going to go after it? Also, too, they named Chris Larson and Brad Garlinghouse. So that's something else too. And it's always a fun thing to take a look at and drill down on this SEC stuff, because I have a feeling that they just keep stepping in it, quite honestly. And I'm not even sure what they want to do, because a lot of what they've been talking about of late has to do with them sort of like on major defense. For example, Ripple wants to take a look at and wants to depose William Hinman. Oh, William Hinman. That's an interesting name. We're going to deep dive that one as well. So you got William Hinman, who, for lack of better words, was the guy who said, hey, ETH isn't a security. Bitcoin's not a security. That's what they said, not a security, right? So we're going to go into that a little bit. But first off, let's start off here. Be a good starting jump off point right here. But there's this, let me throw this up here. Let me get this queued up. But there was a great article, Benjamin Pimentel. You're like, who is that? He's a good writer, a solid writer for Protocol. That's a really interesting it's not that new, but it's they do a really nice sort of analysis. It's sort of bringing journalism back to the tech sector. And I want to throw this up here. But this is Benjamin here, and he said he had a great chat with Ripple's top lawyer. This is Stu Alderati, and he said, Stu said the industry should not be left to guess which tokens will show up one day in the crosshairs of the SEC and which ones won't. That right there is a majorly powerful statement, right? So from a standpoint of like, should we wonder which one's going to show up one day? And after 8 years, well, we know where the XRP showed up, but also they're going after Library. That's LRBY. We had the CEO on the show here, and that was filed, I believe, January, February. But, much the same allegations. So are they going to go after others? They're probably going to go after others. And you got to remember that Library, although they weren't taking on the payment space, what they were taking on was sort of the decentralized video space. For example, they've got a video platform. You can basically earn their token on there. You can also tip with it. There's a lot of things you can do with it. And by the way, all of the on the chain stuff is over there. Everything we do automatically goes over there, and it's on a decentralized platform. For some reason, if anything was to happen to us here, all that stuff is archived, backed up, and it's on a decentralized platform, which makes a lot of sense. Now you say, well, if we're strong and believe heavily in decentralization, now why wouldn't we go over there full time? Well, because adoption takes a little bit of time, and there are people that watch us over there. But again, to roll this out, it's a platform we really strongly believe in, but you got to go where the numbers are. And right now the numbers are here, either on YouTube, on Twitter, and some of the other places, on Twitch, other places that right now have a more developed ecosystem, but they're gaining ground and gaining ground fast. So I want to jump back into this article because there it is right there. Ripple top lawyer on the SEC battle. We're fighting for the crypto industry. And, we never want to underestimate this because quite honestly, fighting for the crypto industry, yeah, we're fighting for XRP because XRP really is what's under attack. But let's be clear about this. The entire crypto industry is on trial. Why? Because if they determine somehow and they try to go into what XRP is, they're going to say, well, what's behind it? Well, every other project's behind it virtually, right? Anything that has a team behind it, anything that, created a token, maybe not released as an initial coin offering, but anything that was actually created. So let's jump back in here. I want to let's go take a look. Good looking gentleman right there. And so Stewart, spent 2 decades working for traditional banks doing the work he described as a little soul crushing. You never want to end up in something called soul crushing. On an attorney forum that I am participating in, somebody had said, if it was between this being an attorney, I would choose the other thing, right? And doing it for 40 years. So sometimes it can be a little bit soul crushing. Then a door opened to a strange new world. Headhunter reached out about 3 years ago, asked to be considered becoming general counsel for Ripple. Then at that point, it was only a 7-year startup. And I think you can only be called a startup, be honestly, if you're within like maybe 5 years. Because when do you become a full-fledged company? Well, when you reach a $10 billion market cap, because that's exactly where Ripple's at right now. 10 billion and I'm not sorry, market cap, but that's $10 billion what the company's worth, right? Sorry, you get the market cap mixed in here once in a while. And so he said that Ripple was using blockchain technology to process payments, but also cryptocurrency called, you know it, you love it, XRP, making the company a pioneer in a small but growing industry. Seemed like a crazy idea. And he says, I'll be honest with you, I didn't know much about blockchain and I knew less about crypto. He said, but he was intrigued and he eventually took the job in January of 2019. Huge career shift, going from traditional banking and basically jumping off a cliff. But he said it was in a really exhilarating way. And as an attorney, the opportunity to enter a relatively nascent industry and help craft a regulatory and legal framework for that industry from a blank slate was an opportunity he just couldn't pass up. So Headhunter reaches out, takes the call. He's like, hello, yeah, what? Crypto, what? Payments company, blockchain. So he jumps. So fast forward 2 years, Alderardi's now finds himself on the front lines of a major legal brawl with the U.S. government in a case it could define the future of Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, and the entire blockchain industry. Now, they correctly get it right here because they say it could define the entire industry, and they got this right, where a lot of other people are like, well, it's all against Ripple, and, it could be, we'll see what happens with Ripple. What's up, Community Flare? Big shout out, Community Flare. What's up? SEC will have a hard time backtracking on what they've already said about ETH. Yeah, it's a strong point right there. Appreciate that. And we will jump into that. What's up, BZ? Good to see you. How are you doing? Yeah, it's I'm in the Danny, what's going on? Good morning. Good to see you in here as well. But when we take a look at in December, they basically stunned the crypto and blockchain space. And they went after Chris Larsen, Brad Garlinghouse, accused the company of raising $1.3 billion in unregistered digital asset securities. Now, this is the crux of the SEC complaint, that the XRP is not a currency, but a security. But then again, we can get into 2 other regulatory bodies of the U.S. government, which said something very different. And Ripple, Larsen, and Garlinghouse failed to apparently register their ongoing offer and sale of billions of XRP to retail investors, which deprived potential purchasers of adequate disclosures about XRP and Ripple and blah, 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 right? So we all know that. Yeah, that's one of the things that kind of was somewhat of the fallout of it. Yeah, they didn't disclose it. They could have disclosed it. But you know why they didn't, and why the Ripple attorneys said they didn't? Because they didn't have to. Want to know why? Because it's not a security. And that's what they alleged. And one of the responses of the Ripple attorneys back to the SEC said there's no reason to register it because they didn't view it as. And then this is where the SEC said, oh, yeah, well, why don't we go back to the communication you had with your attorneys then? Let's see what your attorneys were advising at the time. Well, the judge said, no way, Jose, you can't have it that way. So the judge was like, no, you're not going to be able to do that. That's attorney-client privilege. And let's face it, in 2013, 2009, Bitcoin's out. Nobody knows about it. 2010, 11, and 12 start dripping about it. I heard about it first in 2012. But, it's like magic internet money, right? Nobody knows. It's like some magic money and nobody knows what's going to happen with it. There really wasn't a lot to compare it to. 2013, which attorney out there, let alone anybody in the blockchain space, knew anything about this brave new frontier? Probably nobody. So whatever was said back then is probably a moot point. It makes no difference whatsoever. And now if we jump in here, he says in an interview with Protocol, Alderati explained Ripple's defense against the SEC claims, the lawsuit's impact on the company, and how this legal battle could have a serious impact on the entire crypto and blockchain industry. And I love how they do this. This was edited for clarity and brevity because it was probably a phone call or a Zoom call recorded, and then to make sure that nothing's taken out of context. And I've been there a bunch of times, used to be a spokesperson for a brand, and I would say this is off the record, right? Oh, no, it doesn't matter if it's off the record. I would record them all because I would know that they'd put something in that interview that obviously wasn't supposed to be in that interview. And if you say clearly to the press, this is off the record, that means do not include that in whatever you're going to do. It doesn't matter. They're going to do what they want. That's one of the reasons that you want to record it. If you're the interviewee being interviewed, you always want to make sure you record that as well. Now it says, where does the lawsuit stand? I've read about Ripple's desire to depose a former SEC official who's just been revealed to be former director William Hinman. So Alderati goes on to explain that one of the defenses in the case, the SEC failed to give this fair notice. And if you see what's happening with this, the fair notice is exactly what Ripple is sort of building this whole kind of case around. And the SEC is not happy about it because they keep trying to quash almost anything related to anything fair notice. And it failed to give fair notice to market participants about which digital assets they would consider what's being called an investment contract under the law, stated more precisely how they would go about determining which digital assets would be this investment contract under the law. Not only have they failed to provide fair notice, but we believe, and this is Ripple, we've alleged, this is Alderati talking, that they've actually created a mass confusion in the marketplace. Well, that's an understatement of the year. Yeah, they have absolutely done that. And Hinman said, we believe a central actor in creating the narrative for market participants and actually creating much of the confusion we live with today. And one of the key differences that's been cited between XRP, other cryptocurrencies, the Ripple issued this 100 billion units of XRP all at once. It's not exactly right. They didn't really, I guess they did, but it was open coin and they were gifted it. It wasn't like it magically, was it an initial coin offering? A lot of people get very confused about that, but it was already minted and it was sort of like a gifted thing. And yeah, as a company, did they put it out? Yeah, absolutely. So the timeline is really important. Prior to Ripple being founded, XRP ledger was created, 100 billion were put out there. No more will ever be created. And I don't think that's relevant to the security analysts whatsoever. Security analysts is analysis, I should say, is one of the esoteric tests from a 1946 Supreme Court case called the Howey case. Doesn't matter whether or not the asset is to be created. What matters is the asset sold as part of an investment contract. And they kind of go back and forth on this thing, explaining that. And one of the key questions here that I think we've all been wondering about, not only we've been impacted as investors, right? Because we know the price is artificially sort of, kind of kept down. We know that that's not the real price, right? It's if 384 in that general area was the all-time high. Where is this coin really geared for, right? Probably well beyond that. So when he talks about, he says, let's take a macro view. We think about the importance of this case. The impact of the case is more broadly than Ripple. We think this case is incredibly important to the digital asset industry in the United States. And he's saying, well, that was basically my next question. We're not only fighting to not only get the right result for Ripple, we're fighting to get the right result for the industry. And, isn't it somewhat interesting that the one organization that was notifying the SEC every time, when they did that deal with MoneyGram, hello, SEC. Yeah, we're going to do a deal with MoneyGram. Yeah. So what's the monetary situation going to look like? XRP. yeah, and then we're going to do this, and then we're going to buy a portion of the, of the company in XRP, right? We're going to go do this, and they're asleep at the wheel, nothing said. But all along the way, they were notifying them every single time. They were the only ones really outside of Coinbase came later with having lobbyists. Lobbyists are groups of people who basically do outreach, talk to people, decision makers, legislators, Congress, to try to talk about how important this is and to get it done. That takes time, effort, and money. Ripple earmarked a bunch of money so they could have this lobby group, and Coinbase is another big one, Kraken, but they're all, obviously it's good for the whole industry. And what they say here is that XRP is a token that's been freely actively traded with massive secondary market for more than 8 years. If I were to check today, the volume XRP trading is probably approaching around 2 billion in USD. And that fact you can have is the SEC wake up one day on an asset that has been massively adopted, right? 8+ years and traded globally. We already know they disclosed that about 90% of Ripple's business is outside the US, but a lot of the investors are outside of the US as well. So and after 8 years, think of it now as a security, we need to treat it very differently. The industry cannot operate that way. And, it loosely, sort of thinly, 1933, 34, security laws, and you've got the Howey test, which applies to an orange grove about 2.5 hours north of where I live. Eccentric millionaire, Howey. And the funny thing was that he had actually passed away, and it was his company lived on, and they actually sued his company. So he was famous after his death for this major lawsuit. Probably no one remembers Howey as somebody who built these orange groves and was a politician that was sort of I've alleged in the past that this whole Howey test, that they went after him. If you look at what was going on at the time, and he was making a lot of waves. He was also a politician, and people weren't really liking that. He was really trying to fight for some and for business and business people. He was doing his own fight. And so I kind of feel like maybe he was rubbing some people the wrong way, and they're like, oh, okay, so let's take a closer look at what he's up to. So, that's a possibility, but who knows? It's just a theory at this point. So how do we get through the looking glass for Coinbase comfortable listing Dogecoin, but somehow they're not comfortable listing XRP? This is a very good question. The third largest asset by market volume, been in existence for 8 years, been traded globally, but because of the SEC lawsuit, they pulled it, and all these other exchanges. This is the regulatory morass we're in. That regulatory morass, I think, is resulting in kind of a bizarre or a perverse outcomes. To your question about the impact on Ripple's business, we're a global company. 90 to 95% of our customers and our flows occur outside the US. Fortunately for Ripple, most other established economic centers like Singapore, Japan, UK, Switzerland, they've adopted clear regulatory framework for digital assets. And Jeff and I have talked a lot here about really some of the way other countries look and regulate cryptocurrency. I happen to really like what the UK does, having the 3 prongs, where it doesn't have to be this, that, or the other. It can be multiple, right? It can have a use case. It can function as a currency. There's a bunch of different things it could hit. It could be one of or all 3. And I kind of like that approach. But he goes into being a global company. You want to be able to have a strong presence in the US. He's like, of course. Well, I sit here and tell you that's not been impacted our business. I can't tell you that. But unfortunately, given the fact that we're a global company, given there is other geographies we do business and have clear regulatory frameworks, and you'll see this come up time and time again, clear regulatory framework. And in the US, it's a sad state of affairs. I have to say that, both administrations failed. The previous administration, this administration failed. Absolutely. Was Clayton the right person for the job? It's very odd how he was very sort of a grumpy sort of answers that he would give in interviews. He's a frumpy guy, right? He would be like, wow, yeah. But meanwhile, what does he do? Well, what happens to if Hinman and Clayton after this whole their tenure at the SEC? Well, both of them get hired by firms that are either involved in, or like One River, for example, invested and bet heavily on ETH and Bitcoin. That's a little bit suspect, maybe if there's not even any parallel you could draw, it just doesn't look good. It's not a good look, right? It doesn't smell right, doesn't look right. And it says, if you think about the regulatory uncertainty and the chaos that the SEC's created, it basically ceded that innovation to foreign geographies, right? And that's exactly right. They're, let's just give it away. I mean, yeah, of course, dot-com boom did amazing things for Silicon Valley. We had this big tech boom, and it went global. And that's the great thing about cryptocurrency is it brings us together, right? It's something we all can get involved with, and it's something where we can bring that decision making back to us, right? We can figure out how we want to invest, and if we don't want to be vested in fiat currency, we don't have to be. And that's what's phenomenally amazing here. So a new SEC head, Gary Gensler, he's known for a crypto wonk and expert on blockchain, took the position after the case was filed. You expect that to have an impact. Stewart says, I think the prior administration, the administration that brought us this lawsuit, I think they really demonstrated a fundamental lack of understanding about the industry. Couldn't agree more with him on this one and the technology that underlies the industry. I think it's been proven by this lawsuit. I think it's refreshing to have somebody like Gary Gensler in office because he taught blockchain technology at MIT. Having somebody in office who knows the industry and knows the technology far better. Yeah, okay, great. I'll take that point. That's what we all thought. But what's Gary Gensler doing? Creating an agenda for the entire year for the SEC. Not even a somewhat of a mention of cryptocurrency. It's like, now I understand they're not a regulatory body, right? But they certainly could. And they could say, like, Congress, we really want you to create this regulatory framework. But you at least think it would be somewhat of an agenda item, given the fact, and again, a lot of the stuff that he's sunk his teeth into really has more to do with sort of some of the other things. They went after those Wall Street bets because they found a massive short in the market, and they're like, okay, let's go for this. So if you're going to play the game, you're going to play it around there. Now, did they go after the companies that were doing the massive shorts? No, not them. No, go after the little guy. And so this is where I believe the SEC has really lost its way, and who are they really looking out after anyway? It seems to be big money, right? That's what it seems to be. Anywho, any proposals you'd like the SEC or Congress to explore? A few things from a policy perspective. He goes on. I think policymakers need to keep their eye on 3 things. 1, a lot of trading that goes on, both institutional, retail. If you want to make sure the holders of these assets are protected at some level, consumer protection. 2, you want to keep, to the extent that you can, bad actors out of the space. And that's really one for every time it is brought up in with any agency, like there's bad actors. Oh, but there's people. It will take years, decades. I don't even know how many decades for cryptocurrency to catch up to all the bad actors and all the events that have happened around fiat currency since the beginning of time. It's not going to catch up anytime soon. 3rd, tremendous amount of concern around the impact of these assets on climate. Now, this one I do disagree with this. I understand that Ripple, they do have something that doesn't have that impact. But again, there's a lot of clean energy that is coming out, and we talked about volcano power. We've talked about using the burn off gas from oil that's being wasted. We've talked about just over the last 3 months, a lot of this stuff has come into it. This is one of their selling points. Well, if you had to ask me and you say, like, well, hey, Chip, what do you think when it comes to regulation or the SEC to explore? Well, here's what I would say. The token taxonomy, because the token taxonomy has support, bipartisan support, meaning that it has the support of Democrats and Republicans coming together, crafting something 3 years ago, reintroducing it in March of 2021. It was Warren Davidson, who we had on chain, and also Darren Soto, who is, again, up in the Orlando area. Proud to have him from my state, a Democrat who also understands exactly what this means to innovation and everything else. And they co-authored this bill. They co-sponsored it. They went out and got an equal number of Republicans and Democrats. Now, you don't hear anything about this because it's been for 3 years. And they're like, well, what should we do? Well, here's what Congress came up with. Let's pass a bill that ends up talking about having a committee so we can sit around and talk about it. There's nothing to talk about. The time is now. There's the token taxonomy, bipartisan support, puts all of this stuff to rest. It's done. It's over. And you don't have to worry about this stuff anymore. And this is where it drives me insanely crazy. And I'm going to skip this whole section about the climate and this just everything that's going to be positive for the climate and doesn't have that that footprint is always going to be a good thing, but I don't think you hang your hat on that. I don't think where I feel like it's a bad strategy here is I don't like when you start talking about how it's good for the climate and doesn't have that impact in that carbon footprint that and all of the waste that they claim that Bitcoin has. It kind of starts looking like tribalism to me. It's okay. It's a great feature, but don't hang your hat on that. Talk about the innovation. Talk about what is fantastic about XRP that allows you to do, cross-border remittances, 3 to 4 seconds, full liquidity with your on-demand liquidity product. That's what I want you to spend your time talking about. Talk about the advantages. Talk about what you built. Talk about the unbanked, and talk about people who are guest workers. They go to another country and they need to send money back to their home country, and they're getting just hammered with fees. And what about unbanked? Or people that have a bank account, they're getting hammered with fees and they're getting taken advantage of. And that came out recently with Senator Warren, who was talking to a prestigious bank and said, well, what about these 2.4 billion or whatever it was in fees and overdraft fees? Well, I don't know I don't know anything about, first he didn't know the number. Then she had the number and she told him it's 2.4, whatever, 2 point some billion and overdraft fees. That means it's during a time where you can't work, you're closed inside your house, your bank overdraft, something happened, maybe an auto, something came out of there. Now you're going to get charged a ridiculous fee on an account that you don't have, and it keeps going negative and negative. And this is largely how, believe it or not, at least in the United States, how a lot of banks make their money. And so she pretty much nailed them on that, right? And again, they're being taken advantage of. That's what I would focus on. I would focus on that. It talks a little bit about his career at HSBC, came from HSBC, Citibank, American Express. And although it's interesting, I want to more keep it on the topic of Ripple and XRP here. He said, what's been the toughest part of your transition less than 2 years after joining Ripple? He cites, obviously, the lawsuits. That's kind of what I'm built to do. When I was in private practice as a litigator, I was a trial lawyer, and I had 2 stints with special assistant U.S. attorneys for the government. So he's used to these big, naughty, sort of complicated regulatory and legal battles. And believe it or not, he says that's where I'm most comfortable playing. Well, that's really what he does, right? That's really what he does. Excellent article. I really wanted to sort of do a breakdown on that. Want to jump over here to the chat and see what everybody's up to here. But it was, yeah, hey guys from the UK, what's going on? Shiny, good to see you coming in today. Yeah, so this is a good one too. It says maybe, just maybe, Gensler has got crypto on the SEC's calendar because they're waiting to farm crypto out to another department. Yes or no? Hard to know, man. I mean, it's real. I mean, we're at the stage right now where I just don't even know. First of all, I didn't believe we'd be here at this juncture in time. But on its face, I love Gensler. I think he's a good guy. I think he really does understand the nuts and bolts of it. But he's been put into a very difficult situation. You coming into this is like, yeah, well, there's major lawsuits, probably one of the biggest one of this century that's going to define or at least redefine how they look at digital assets. And one of the things that was brought up the other day, there was a fantastic webinar with John Deaton, Rosalind Layton. Rosalind Layton puts out amazing articles where she's really been heavily critical of the SEC, and rightfully so. She's called it out every time. She's a brilliant writer. If you want to go check out her stuff. But one of the things that kind of sort of came out in that whole thing was they were talking about, regulations, regulatory clarity. They kind of broke it all down. And, John Dean actually had mentioned something about ETH, saying that, well, if you look at the XRPL, it's actually more decentralized than, let's say, Ethereum. So a lot of great things sort of came out of that that article there, or I said that webinar. And it was an audio only, which I like. It's fun to listen to audio only, but there's something about seeing the reaction of people's faces. There were 4 or 5 people on there, and there was some kind of headbutting, I should say. And they were kind of like, a little bit of disagreement, but done in a very professional way. Everybody allowed the other person to speak. There was no people cutting anybody off. It was very well done. And I have to say that I was missing the expressions. When somebody something kind of weird to like, well, what I believe is that SEC could be a security. You'd be somebody like, looking around, like you kind of want that sort of reaction, like, and does everybody have a poker face? No. And sometimes when you're sitting on these Zoom meetings, you sort of forget that you're on camera, because how do I know? Because everyone's like doing other stuff. They're sitting there typing, they're looking at stuff. I'm on them all day. And, they're always doing something, right? And I want to go into, there's something I want to pull up here that I saw tweeted out here. And this is something that I saw Bull Run Wonka tweet out here. Take a look at this. Let's add that. So I'm going to play this video. We're going to take a look at this. I want to get your thoughts. Basically, there's no rules that the SEC abides by, and frankly, no rules for Ripple to abide by either. And again, that's that whole fair notice. Everything the SEC is doing is completely subjective and has created that potential for corruption and personal bias. And then hashtag BTC Bitcoin, hashtag ETH ETH, and both of them benefit Hinman. And what he's getting at here is the whole idea that, yeah, in fact, it does look like does look a little suspicious when Hinman goes to another firm, and then there's a whole venture capitalist thing thrown in there. It's starting to look like a big time movie, right? You got the protagonist, being Ripple, and you've got all of these so-called bad actors that are going after him. Then there's us, the investors, that we're sitting back and we're going like, hey, we're the investors. We lost all this money. What are you going to do about it? And they're in there fighting the company Ripple, right? That's basically what it looks like. And I want to show this right here. Matt Morrow says, personally, I think it's an attack on U.S. citizens most of all. Us outside the U.S. can still buy XRP freely, but you guys only have 2 exchanges, depending on what state you're from, to buy from. That's a really good point, Matt, because, we do have a limitation. And if you live in New York, good luck. You've got very friendly with 3 letters called VPN. And, you're having to do something. And again, it's your money. It's your money, your choice, and what you want to do with it and how you want to invest. We don't need a nanny state telling us, do it this way or don't do it that way, or here, let me help you. Yeah, they're going to protect us when it suits them. But when it suits us, that's a pretty solid assessment, Matt. I like that one. But I want to jump in. I want to go ahead and play this video. Let me jump out of here for a second. And today I am drinking a little bit of Pilon, a Cuban espresso. It is fantastic. As you know, Jeff and I are also coffee connoisseurs, as we are whiskey connoisseurs. So yeah, it's kind of 2 peas in a pod when it comes to that. And let me go ahead and pull this up. But I want to play 2 videos for you. And they're kind of contrasting videos in a sense. I'm going to take a look at these here. Let me, of course I can't find, holy cow, where is this puppy? Let's see. I know that, okay. Let me go in here, but they're sort of, yeah, we'll play this one first. Let's see which one. I got to look at them. They're both sort of similar. Okay, here we go. This is a good one. And this was the one that was on that tweet we just read right there. But I'm going to go ahead.
Now, you also talked about initial coin offerings or ICO.
I'm going to play this, guys. If you can't hear it, let me know. You should be able to hear it, but if there's a reason you can't, I don't want to continue playing something. But let's listen in.
Ways of raising money using cryptocurrency.
Of course, that's Bill Hinman, and of course, no, he's not sleeping. He's looking at his notes, what's his prepared statement, and what he's going to read. But you show up on TV. It's why if you're going to put the notes, always put them in front of you, so you're looking out here. It's a bad look if you're looking down. And Bill, wake up, bink, bink, bink. So there he is. He's like, so let's listen in on the question here, because this is a good one.
You also talked about initial coin offerings or ICOs, which are ways of raising money using cryptocurrencies. Did you use a similar reasoning? You implied that most seem to be securities, ICOs, but some of them are not. Can you just show us what the difference is simply?
I wish we had a simple way to say this is in and this is out.
He says he wishes we had a simple way to say this is in, this is out. We actually have a simple way, Bill. We have a simple way. It's called language. It's called saying it, right? We had a simple way. But listen to what he goes on to say.
As I mentioned, there are usually facts and circumstances tests, but a key factor is there a third-party promoter here who knows much more about the instrument than investors might? If that's the case, that's sort of an initial indicator that we might have a securities transaction. If people are buying it for investment and for a return and looking to that party for a return, then again, that's an indicia of a security.
Okay, so I'll talk a bit about the
Okay, so this is beautifully sort of cut in, right? So this is Vitalik Buterin. This is circa right around 2014, and you got to feel for the kid because what was he like 22 years old? 20? He's a young kid back then. I mean, he's young. He's still in his 20s, but something he's given the talk and something falls over on the podium, and it's a little bit on the clumsy side. But what we want to pay attention to is what is he actually saying here, and what did Bill Hinman just say right there? So let's kind of contrast this.
funding model. So we will have a fundraiser for 2 months starting February 1st. It will be available at funds.ethereum.org. So the idea is that part of the initial issuance will be 1,000 Ether for 1 Bitcoin, or up to 2,000 Ether for 1 Bitcoin if you get in early to compensate for the increased risk. So
If you get in early, going fast, if you get in early one time only, you can get it today. If you get in early, it might not last, but you got to get in early. We have a fundraiser, funds.ethereum. Whatever it was, and I'm not going to get it per se. The whole idea of it was they had a fundraiser, right? Fundraiser, and you can get in early because you can mitigate the risk. Let's hear it.
the issuance model is that we will fundraise, suppose that we hand out X Ether through the fundraiser, then there will be about 0.5x will be pre-mined, and then 0.4x after that will be mined per year forever. So it's this hybrid of
So we find out that that's not a great model, and then we spend a couple years sort of backtracking on that. But here we go.
of the Mastercoin and Ripple model.
In your speech,
Did you hear that?
And Ripple model.
in your
Ripple model.
speech that neither Bitcoin nor Ether would be considered securities and thus not under the purview of the SEC. Can you very briefly explain what your reasoning is?
Sure, Bob. These are complex facts and circumstances tests, but when we look at Bitcoin or if we look at Ether and the highly decentralized nature of the networks, we don't see a third-party promoter where applying the disclosure regime would make a lot of sense. So we're comfortable in some sort of viewing these as items that don't have to be regulated as securities.
Well, there you have it, right? So you contrast that, what he's saying right there, and again, this is something, and then Mickey B. Fresh threw something out and tagged me to thank you. He's always looking out, but it plays beautifully into this statement here. But you have Bill Hinman saying, well, it's very complex. You know, I love when you ask an official, anybody connected to government, you ask them a question. Hey, what do you think about the weather? It's a very complex question. There's a lot of mitigating factors. You got to remember that since the dawn of time. Do you like it today? Is it raining? I mean, anything going on? The total complexities of what we're talking about here, you have to remember so many factors go into it. This is kind of how they talk, right? A lot of gibberish. They can't answer. They don't get like yes. You know, it's like, hey, did you come across? How did you do that? It's like you never get like a yes or no. It's just always like a long gibberish sort of an answer. And you know, look, it's part of the gig. It's what they do, right? Everything. You know, Jeff and I talked the other night that said that we think they want to be as sort of broad as they can be. You know, don't give everybody everything. Just sort of like kind of cover it all and don't really give any sort of real clarification. And that way, it's broad enough to where you can go ahead and do some enforcement because you don't really have clear regulatory framework. You can just sort of interpret it any way you want. And then when you wake up after an 8.5-year slumber, you can go like, oh, I know we've been investigating Ripple for 2 years, but my God, we have to go after them and drop this lawsuit. And then they got to go. Then, this is what else I find bizarre and sort of leads me to believe that the trial attorney that the SEC originally had bailed. It was like on a Friday, it's like, boom, gone. And then they had another trial attorney jumping in, right? This other attorney jumps in and they need some time. So what do? Oh, they don't have enough discovery time. 2.5+ years of investigating. That wasn't enough discovery time. So they're going to ask for 60 days as if that's going to make a major difference. But really what it's probably doing is buying them a little bit of time here, right? And Ani, you had mentioned some coffee here. Let me see if I can get this right. Let me see. Okay, yeah, this is right here. May I recommend Cafe La Llave? Yeah, I've had Cafe La Llave as well. Is that the red bag? I think it's red or something like that. I was looking at it in the store too, and I sometimes I've had that in the past. That is a good coffee as well. But I'll have to grab that next time, as you know, just to grab it. But I got some pilon, so which I love, and I got a bunch of different ones, and you know, Segafredo, and there's just you know, Jeff loves Segafredo, which is fantastic, but there's so many good ones out there, you know, except for, I'm not going to get on a coffee tirade, but I don't know, the Starbucks seems always a little bit on the bitter side for me. And anytime I like go there, I just sort of, even if I get Americano, the Americano is 2 shots of 2 or 3. I usually get 3 shots of espresso with water. You know, it's more like a heavier coffee. That's the Americano that they call it. But yeah, that's something that I will get. It always seems to be a little bit on the bitter side. But I want to go into this other one, and this is something that Mickey B. Fresh had put out. And let me find it. Yeah, so sure, now I can't find it. I'm like going through my tabs here to see if I can. I just had it, and I really want to make sure. Here it is right here. Okay, good. And so Mickey B. Fresh put this out. And again, good looking out, because this one here ties beautifully into what we were just talking about. Let me go ahead and remove this other one. And let's go ahead and take a look at this. Let's share this right here. I want to look at the tweet, and then we're going to actually take a look at this video. But this was Mickey B. Fresh. He says, you know, Bill Hinman, former SEC director, with an interview with Chris Brummer, repeating his original few months after his original speech. He clearly says we or we're 5 times when he talks about ETH not being a security. And what he's referring to there is when he says we, at the very beginning of that speech he made at that Yahoo forum, he says, and we played it the other night, where he goes on to say, these are my personal comments, and everything I say does not reflect the agency. Well, then why are you going there? Nobody cares what your personal comments are, you know, and nobody really cares or invites you to a conference to hear your personal comments. Same goes with Hester Pierce. Same goes with all of them. You're there. You're invited there because of who you are, you know, and what you represent. So he does say, and you know, this is what they always say. Well, we believe this and we believe that, and we're doing this and we're doing that. Oh, it's just not. It's not as the SEC. I mean, who are these we and we're? So he says it 5 times when he talks about ETH not being a security, and he says our twice. Hinman now says he wasn't talking about the SEC view. WTF, right? And this is a really good assessment, Mickey B. Fresh. And let's go ahead and let's queue up that video there. I want to go ahead and I want to add this. I will queue up the video, and it is a good. It's a fair assessment. If you're going to say we were thinking about it this way, we look at that way, especially when you have a giant SEC logo behind you. That's also a little bit on the suspect side. Here we go. Let's throw this up. And again, if you can't hear it, let me know.
We had expressed to the world.
Hang on here. This is like going all over the place. But let's play this video. Let's listen in.
Main principles. I know there are also a number of folks, both in the venture VC community as well as entrepreneurs, and it's always good. I tell them to listen to people who are actively crafting the rules for this work, and maybe you could repeat a couple of the 10,000-foot
Sure.
ideas.
I mean, the speech got a lot of attention because it was the first time we had expressed to the world that we didn't view Ether as a security.
See that? And this is what Mickey B. Fresh is so elegantly pointing out. It was the first time that we. Who's we? Who is we, Bill Hinman? We, me and the SEC? Or we being your family and friends or whatever? I mean, yeah, it was the first time the speech that we. Let's play that back. Hear that again.
Expressed to the world that we didn't view Ether as a security as it was then currently being offered.
Okay, there's an important point. As it was then being offered, right? As it was then being offered. We didn't believe it. But he wasn't talking to the official capacity, but here he's all about it. We.
We're not talking about the original offering, and we're not talking about what it may evolve to over time, or if someone repackages it or does other things with Ether. But we're saying at the current time, there wasn't really a need to regulate Ether as a security in our minds. The speech was called when Howie met Gary.
He almost seems really excited about that.
I know there are also
when Howie met Gary. You know, yeah, he's talking about obviously the Howie test, but you know what he's saying here is that we were not talking about what it was. We were talking about present day. Now, this is the part that, you know, and thank you, Mickey B. Fresh, for you know, pointing this out, because it played beautifully into that other video that I had queued up. And let's analyze this for a second. So we saw Vitalik Buterin talk about, in 2014 that, yeah, you could get in early, go ahead, and it was like, they had sort of a Bitcoin to an Ethereum and blah, blah, blah. And he talked about how it would work, how much initially would be produced, and then how much would be mined to the end of time until they mined it all, right? Now, here we have Hinman saying something very distinctly different than what we've heard in the past, right? So as far as his speech to Yahoo saying, well, we consider, we and we're, consider not to be. Now, here's the problem. It's like when John Deaton was on earlier in the week, John pointed something out very important. He said, one of the things that he hopes to do on behalf of all of us as representing the XRP community, well beyond the 18,000 names that are standing on formally on a list, but there are hundreds of thousands of us investors. And whether you're in the United States or not, it doesn't matter, but you have a vested interest and you're looking out after your investment and what happens. So Hinman says, well, we're not looking at it back then or how it was created. Well, here's how it was created. In 2014, Vitalik Buterin announces it, which we saw, and you could get in early and you got the coin a year later. Sure looks and smells an awful similarity to an initial coin offering, right? An ICO, but not in the traditional sense where you launch it and then you have so many units and then you purchase it then. It was kind of done in a thing. And Buterin also mentions the Ripple model. I don't know what he's talking about there. I don't know what the parallels are. Now, why didn't, when John was talking about the other night, he said, what he'd like to do is fight on behalf of us. If he gets the opportunity for them to put that today's XRP is not a security. Now he's got something perfect to hang his hat on, because you had Hinman who was saying, no, we're not looking at how it was created or somebody packages it and does something else with it. We're talking about today's ETH not being a security. Well, why didn't they do that from the very beginning? Why didn't they come out and say, we don't think today's XRP, which there's clearly more use cases for XRP than there ever are for ETH. And I think John Deaton's right. The XRPL is certainly more decentralized. The way that if you want to suggest an amendment, you have to have 80% consensus to be able to change something, right? If you want to go ahead and make a change on something with the XRPL, you got to be able to pass it, right? So there have been some small amendments that have passed. Some of them have been put out there for years. But why didn't they come out and say, hey, today's XRP, not a security? Well, then the only thing we would have been talking about was in 2013, they could make the argument that it wasn't totally decentralized. It really looked like a security offering. But you got to go into court and prove it. Go ahead and prove it. And if you do prove it, what do? You fine them. All that stuff with the Telegram and the Gram token, it amounted to a fine, and they probably paid the attorneys more money than the actual fine. And so then what happens to that money, that fine money? So all of this hoopla and wasting time and hurting investors, hurting the market, more importantly, hurting one of the most brilliant companies to come out in this century that's solving the biggest problem. Now, is it a good idea to go after Swift? Like, you're the new guy on the block and you come on, you're like, you know what? Come on, put them up. I'll take you on. Swift, been around since the 1974. Been around forever, has the cabal, has the lock. The U.S. government can tell bad actors. They can shut them down at will. And again, who wouldn't want a new company to come in? Well, you can't shut them down. They're a private company, right? You can't shut down someone you don't like, or because you have some kind of a gripe with them, you can't shut them down, right? So this whole thing sort of is an oddity in itself. But I think that ultimately, the way they should have framed this was, we don't believe today's XRP, and they can still say that today's XRP is not a security, right? And John Deaton, when he filed his last filing, talked about all of the use cases. He put out an amazing tweet, and people were talking about all the use cases. And there were some in there, I'll be honest, that I forgot about, thinking, wow, this really is powerful. So today, the use case, how it's transacted, nobody purchased, at least in my mind. Did you purchase XRP? Thought you were buying Ripple? I don't think it comes anywhere near constituting an investment contract. Now, Ripple supplying that to somebody else, you might make that argument. But again, what's the point of it all, right? You've got this whole industry hanging on this one particular action right here, and that's what's happening in the entire. This whole industry is hanging on that. Let me see what else we have here. I'm trying to. Yeah, there was another great. Let's see if I can play this video too. Yeah, Monica Long. Let's see if we can play this video. Yeah, she's talking about Ripple here too. But again, this is one of those ones embedded. I like the ones you can sort of peel off, but sometimes when they're embedded, we can't necessarily do that. But Monica Long, this is a very cool. I guess we'll just take a look at this. Let me see if I can do this. There we go. And again, I'm going to need you guys to let me know if you can hear it, because sometimes I don't know if you'll be able to hear this or not. But this was on CNBC. Cryptocurrencies become the new money as institutional adoption is on the rise. And this is talking about Ripple. Monica Long of Ripple discusses how major banks and financial players have started opening up crypto offerings. So let's see if we can, let's go full screen on this puppy here. And you guys let me know if you can hear this. Should be able to hear it.
Company continues to grow. So since the SEC case was brought against Ripple.
Yeah, I'm going to just pause it there because I want to wait to see if you guys, if you're hearing this or not, because the way I have to jump through hoops to share it. So let me know in the chat right there. Just give me a yes, you can hear it, because I want to jump into what she's saying, and I guess I can sort of paraphrase if you guys aren't hearing it. But again, there's always a little bit of a delay from what I actually see in the chat. Okay, you do hear it. Perfect. Thank you for that. Appreciate that. Everything good. Excellent. Thank you, Stephen. Appreciate that. Yep, Jack. Jackie. Yep. Appreciate it. Spell check. Spell check. Spell check is good. So this is Monica Long, obviously Ripple X. Let me just cue it back up here. Let's listen to it in its entirety.
Company continues to grow. So since the SEC case was brought against Ripple, we've added 20 new customers to RippleNet, the network that makes cross-border payments more efficient around the world. And we continue to grow and expand the business. Regarding the case, we continue to feel very confident that we are on the right side of the facts and the law here, and we do look forward to getting through it.
Okay, and Monica, if you take this though in consideration with what's going on globally, I know you wouldn't be impacted by the China crackdown directly, but it does speak to the broader issue as to regulators trying to hurry up here and come to some agreement on how to regulate this space. I mean, what is your impression? Does this continue to be just a massive overhang on the price, and will we continue to see volatility until there's more consensus globally on how authorities should handle the crypto market?
What we're seeing in China, as Arjun had said, it's not new. So this was a cryptocurrency ban the government came out with in 2013, reiterated in 2017, and now we see it again in 2021 on the back of a big bull run across crypto. And so, regulators around the world are paying attention to run across crypto. And so, regulators around the world are paying attention to it. We're seeing Switzerland, the UK, they've all come out with clear regulatory frameworks for crypto assets and how they'll treat them. And I think it's notable that with this latest surge in cryptocurrency market activity between 2020 and 2021, it's different. It's institutional adoption. It's major banks like DBS and JP Morgan and Citi and major financial players like PayPal and Square opening up new crypto offerings. And so we do feel within the industry that we've reached this watershed turning point where crypto really is going to become the new money and the new financial infrastructure for more efficient financial systems.
And there we have it. So yeah, it's and I think she's brought up. Hang on a second. Oh boy, this thing's now we got all our videos playing here in my headphones here. But she's really sort of capturing. She talks about institutional investing. She's talking about how it really has changed over the last couple of years, where the big banks like JP Morgan were all like, oh no, we're not going to get into that. And then all of a sudden, oh, we want to have a fund, for our elite rich investors, and then we want to set it aside. Well, why do you assess that? Why do you think that's happening? Well, because people are asking for it, right? They're probably like, well, when are you going to offer it? When are you going to offer it? They don't just come to a conclusion one day after being naysayers for so many years, and they say, well, we've had an aha moment, and we do believe, well, it's one of the things cryptocurrency and banks, cryptocurrency will put banks and DeFi will put banks out of business, right? It is the kryptonite to them, and we'll destroy them, right? And that's really, they'll be the last ones to know. They'll be hedging and hawing and think they're going to continue to live like legacy times. Not going to happen. I wanted to boy, here, I wanted to go ahead and throw this up here. Thank you for that. This is, of course, not guys put me always in nefarious position here. It's like, whoa. So when XRP is used for remittances, what does this mean for the value of the Flare token? Is Flare used for derivatives? And if so, is this a quadrillion market? It's a really good question. Thank you for the support. The idea, well, look, I mean, the whole idea of Flare coming out is going to be the same way we saw XRP being like really kind of like Bitcoin 2.0, right? Address some of the shortcomings. You say, well, it's a store of value. Okay, well, that's if the value is there, yes, check that, tick that box. If it's not there, and I wake up this morning to see 9% fallout, slide for Bitcoin, then where's the value, right? So you say, well, it's a store of value. Well, gold is a store of value. That's not very volatile. Silver, any sort of precious metals are. And when you look at Flare, it's in its infancy, right? So where it's going, and what you're talking about being the quadrillion marketplace, the potential of where this could head, I believe, is going to be mind-blowing. The same way we have Ethereum, where everything was being on Ethereum, and then you had the high gas fees, and you had someone like Polygon, formerly named Matic, come along and say, okay, we know we have a good way to circumvent those crazy fees and a bunch of other stuff. And when Ethereum started minting, ERC20s and BEP20 coins, and it started to look very crowded, and so when you had a lot of activity, your gas fees went up, right? So you had these massive gas fees, and I had another story here. We were talking about Israel was trialing the digital version of the shekel, which is their fiat currency, like using what? XRP? No. Were they using XLM? Nope. Hedera Hashgraph? Cardano? No. What were they using? Ethereum. That is a weird choice. I saw Crypto Eddie put out a tweet not too long ago about another country that was also trialing digital version of their currency, or potentially a CBDC, using Ethereum. I'm sorry, folks. Ethereum is good and has its strengths, but one of the strengths is not going to be remittances, liquidity, interoperability. That's just it's not what it's known for. And so when we talk about Flare, there's 4 assets right off the bat you'll be able to mint these assets on, which are which is Litecoin, XRP, Dogecoin, and the other one is can't think of it right off the bat. But the point of it is that in a DeFi structure, and once it's launched, yeah, this thing could take off and get some legs. But there are so many signal providers right now that have joined, that are already ready to go, and it hasn't launched the network yet, right? So you have the signal providers, and then you have all these people that are going to build. So remember, this is an ecosystem that's a lot more mature, but it's in its infancy. It's going to take some time to grow. It certainly could turn into that marketplace you're talking about. And I just, to throw this up there again, what does it mean for the value of the Flare token? One of the things that I've always asserted here is that the whole idea of the Flare token, people, I've never been a fan of the IOUs. It's more of a marketing sort of a thing than anything else. But what the value of it really doesn't matter to me. I really like the Alex Mashinsky sort of school of thought, which is like, you hold your cryptocurrency and you send it off to work for you, right? So the whole idea of creating this passive income, if you delegate a vote to a signal provider, if you delegate, you're holding your crypto, but you're now able to earn on that. And then when you go ahead and mint an F asset inside of a smart contract, you're going to be able to earn. And I know a lot of it's confusing at the time. You thank God for Flare community and Mickey B. Fresh, who break it down and make it more palatable, even for me. But thankfully, we've got 2 stars out there that are breaking the stuff down, letting us know exactly what's going on. I like to catch all their videos because they are very close to it and really get it and understand it. But until it's launched, we're really going to be kind of like, how does it really work? When you see it in action, I think we're all going to be pretty happy with it. But again, don't expect everything perfect out of the gate. Just know that the fact that you can hold your crypto, watch it grow, and then have it work for you is really what the banks do. The banks have institutional lending, and who is the one that always pays the price? We do. We're the ones, you pay it, I pay it, but we are taking that level of what the banks do now, and we're bringing it down to the us level. We, the people, will be able to do that. We'll be able to become sort of the banks. That's going to be something that's going to be huge for the future. And where DeFi is heading. And I think DeFi, if the banks were really thinking about this the right way, they would jump in head first, figure out a way how they could do it, because they're not going to survive on the legacy model. You know, charging exorbitant fees to the end user, being, you know, giving no interest. We don't care about that anymore. Take our fiat currency. You know, Mark Phillips had a great tweet put out last night, and I don't have it handy, but I'll just paraphrase it. He said, "Is fiat currency like buying a brand new car? You drive it off the lot and it's already lost its value." And I laughed, and I thought that's a great analogy. Mark always has really good analogies, and that was a fantastic analogy. Yeah, you drive it off the lot and it instantly lost, you know, thousands of dollars in value. Because if you drive it back onto the lot, try to sell it to anyone else, a third party, whatever, you can't get the same value for it. So yeah, he equated that to the, you know, what it's like to buy a car. And so when we're going down this road, our investment, our capital is going to be able to earn for us. And that's where we're headed in this whole thing. And that's going to be the value and the excitement of what DeFi is. And I'm talking about traditional DeFi, where one person, two, three, a couple of people, whoever get in, and these pools and stuff, a lot, you can get hurt. We had an article not too long ago where somebody lost $5,000, right? So again, if you put into a smart contract, whether it goes through or not, there's something to be earned right there. There's going to be a cost to it. So being able to earn, being able to do, you know, getting yield, and it's going to be fantastic. That's really where we're headed. And I want to let you guys know that I appreciate you being here. I appreciate every time you guys come in here. And, you know, you got other things to do, but thanks for hanging with me. Thanks for hanging with Jeff and I. We broadcast live 6 days a week, Sunday through Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern time, Miami time, to 9 roughly, give or take. And then 8 a.m. in the morning on Saturdays. And then we're back at it tomorrow night. And hopefully Jeff will be back. We'll see what happens, if he's back or not, but we'll check that out. But I really want to thank you guys for being in here. And if it's your first time here, like, subscribe, click that notification bell. Why? Because it tickles the algorithm of YouTube, and YouTube suggests this video too. If you like it, based on what you sort of like and look at, then it can recommend it to some other people. That really helps us out a lot. And also sharing the video, sharing it on about 20% of the traffic on the chain comes from Twitter, believe it or not. And so when you share it and people share it out there and they share the video or a clip of it, that helps us tremendously. So again, thank you, everybody. Really appreciate it. Wanted to, so Seth, appreciate you being here today, man. Yeah, thank you, Otis. Space XRP, thank you very much. Thank you, Jackie, much appreciated. Kelvin, thank you for that. XRP subscribe, beautiful. Matt Morrow, thanks heaps, Chip. Enjoy your day. Appreciate everything you and Jeff do for us all. And yeah, we appreciate you guys too, because you come in here, you're the faithful. Devon Steve says, cheers. Covered a fair bit of ground today. Yeah, we can't get it all in, believe it or not. Jeff and I always have way more than what we can always get to. But I always appreciate it. And again, you guys can always hit us up. You guys see something interesting, you know, like Mickey B just tweeted us on stuff. You can go ahead and tweet us too. Like, say, hey guys, check this out. You can tag us in tweets. We look at it, and you know, we attempt to, like, sometimes it makes it on the show. We don't always have the attribution. We'll do it when we can. But if you see something interesting, throw it out to us. That's all I have today, guys. Have a fantastic rest of your weekend. Enjoy. Jeff and I will be back at it tomorrow night. Take care. Chip out.
Are you down with OTC? Please like, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified when the next video drops.